Okay, beautiful world. We're here with tip number 5 for visualization and meditation. And the first 4 tips kind of led up to this, and you'll see why I started with those. And I'd like to go through them real quick before we get into tip number 5. And as much as I wanted that to be a simple, quick tip, it kind of turned into an amalgamation of universal theories and vast information. So stick with me. This is going to be the deepest dive we've taken yet. So let's go through the first few tips. Tip number 1 was to put the phone down and take some time away from Netflix and all those shows. Use your mind's eye a little more than you usually do. Don't depend so much on these screens to keep yourself occupied. And just like going to the gym, it's tough in the beginning, but the more you do it, the easier it gets and the better you'll get at it. And tip number 2 was to use the phosphenes or the light trails that you see when you close your eyes, the memory of light that you can see. Try to add a little color to it, try to move it, shape it, influence it, or just try to watch it and notice it, see what it turns into. Tip number 3 was to use motion or actions in your scenes. And if it's tough to picture an entire scene in motion, then just try to vaguely picture that scene and in your mind's eye, with your third eye, focus on one individual moving part of that scene, whether it's a ceiling fan or a clock or the steering wheel or a person tapping their leg or just the sidewalk in front of you if you want to be in first person walking down the street. Like I said, picture the door opening, all that, whatever it takes. Try whatever works for you and whatever level you're at. But tip number 4 was to use rhythmic breathing, and what I mean by rhythmic breathing is to just be conscious of the rhythm of your breath. There's a lot of different breathing techniques you can look up, and we're not necessarily talking about that here, although a lot of those are great. My main point is to just be conscious of your breath. A lot of times it can help keep you grounded and help to keep you from getting distracted by the fleeting thoughts that might come and go in your head. So then we can get into tip number 5, and that is to use some sort of sound to stimulate the visuals. And this can be binaural beats, monaural beats, isochronic tones, meditation music, any music really, depending on what you prefer. Nature sounds, even chanting mantras, just humming or singing, and even prayer and verbal affirmations are all kind of related in the way that we're about to talk about. So that's tip number 5, is to use sounds. So let's talk about binaural beats. And binaural beats you need headphones for. And with the headphones, when you put on the binaural beat, if you hold up one headphone, you'll hear a solid, steady frequency, one steady tone. And if you put on the other headphone, you'll hear a different frequency, but still a steady tone. Then if you put on both headphones, your brain is going to balance out the difference between the two frequencies, and it turns into like a wavy, pulsating sound. It's pretty trippy, actually. It's strange how it works. But so if you're playing like 400 hertz in this ear and 410 hertz in this ear, your brain is going to synchronize to the difference between the two to 10 hertz. And the reason that's so important is that the measurable frequency of your brain can determine a lot of things, from your mood to your alertness. And when your brain is in different states, you have different mental experiences. So the idea is that I believe they call it brainwave entrainment. You can change the state of your mind by using sounds. So that's how binaural beats work. Monaural beats are basically the same thing, but you can play them with speakers. So you'll have one speaker playing one frequency, another speaker playing a different frequency, and before the sound gets to your brain, it will already have formed into its own pulsating sound. And isochronic tones are, you can use headphones or speakers, but it's just a pulsating rhythmic beat, a frequency from the same sound source. So really the only difference between all of these things is how your brain perceives them, and different methods have different effects on different people at different levels in different ways, just like with everything. But if you use these, they can work, they can help a lot. And like I said, it's similar to chanting mantras. It's also similar to speaking things out loud while you're trying to visualize them, although that involves also a lot of conceptualizing too. But we'll get into that in another video. The reason why I wanted to make this video so long and extensive is that I want to talk about why binaural beats are directly connected to visualization. And the first way I would approach that is by talking about the concept of sacred geometry. And again, sacred geometry can get into some pretty muddy waters, but the underlying concept is still important here because sacred geometry says that everything in the universe is reflected in geometric shapes and patterns. Everything in the universe, from the micro to the macro. And it's interesting how a lot of the patterns and shapes in sacred geometry are reflected so much in science and nature. Now, where they connect is in something called cymatics, and cymatics is the study of the shape of sound. And one way that this is represented is people will take like a flat sheet, they'll stick a speaker up underneath it, they can play a frequency from that speaker, pour some sand onto this flat sheet, or sometimes they'll use a liquid. The sand or whatever on that flat sheet will start to take shapes, different shapes and patterns depending on what frequency is played. And the shapes that you'll see that the sound makes are represented by all of the fundamental shapes in sacred geometry. It's really interesting. When you start to do something like a binaural beat to these, so you could play two different frequencies to get that same pulsating effect, you'll start to see it kind of move and flow into and out of itself in swirling patterns and all types of patterns. So the different mental states are measurable and they're covered in a spectrum. And just like with colors, these have frequencies within frequencies and also frequencies beyond our perception. So we all know there's sounds both high and low that we can't hear, just like there's colors on both ends of the spectrum that we can't see. Then to get into it, I'm not a physicist, but when you start to study some of the ideas behind quantum physics and how particles are represented by waves, and you get into the string theory and the superstring theory that everything is vibrations and frequencies within frequencies, and this can be an infinite ongoing universe. You know, maybe other realities are just beyond our perception in these other frequencies, or what some might call dimensions, and maybe some of these dimensions are dreams, and maybe these dreams are something that we can tap into when we're in different mental states. So that's basically what I wanted to cover in this video. And if anybody's tried any of these things, if you have, let me know. And if not, you should try them and let me know how it goes. If you have any questions or any thoughts, let me know what you think, even if you want to direct message me and we can talk more about it, or just, leave a comment, like or dislike, share, subscribe, depending on what platform you're on. I'll be posting links to the first 4 videos in the comments section here, depending on what platform it's on. And these are just some dots that I've connected. There's a lot more to talk about on all of these subjects, but this was just a way to get our feet wet and kind of get the ball rolling in this direction. So, thank you.